Welcome back, everyone. We are going back to the beginning of the book of Genesis, the book of Bereshis, and we are starting now with the second Parsha, Parsha Noach. I want to focus on something I think will help us in understanding the psukim themselves, but probably will be one of the most important fundamental aspects of what our focus should be in terms of raising our children. I'd like to focus on that just a little bit because I think it's a critical aspect to ensuring that we have well-developed children, and I think it is a innate truth that our children will, one way or other, we end up coming to this reality, to this truth, but unfortunately it's sometimes too late. We have two major cataclysmic events in this week's Parsha that affect the whole world. At the beginning of the Parsha, we have pretty much the decimation of humanity. The entire world is subjected to a deluge, to a flood that, other than the species of animals that were saved, and Noach, his wife, and his 3 children, and their wives, everybody else was decimated, everybody else was killed. The straw that breaks the camel's back, what Rashi says, the din was nigzar, what sealed their fate was Hamas. Hamas, or they stole from each other. And it doesn't have to be even major amounts. Rashi brings down that they even stole less than a pruta, taking a grape, taking even things that they financially are not responsible for. But it was that behavior, that attitude, the gezel, the stealing from one another, that sealed their fate. Towards the end of the Parsha, we have again an event that affects man forever. There was a leader known as Nimrod. He was one of the Babylonian king. Some say it's the same person as Amraphel, one of the kings that fought the 4 kings against the 5 kings, was known as Amraphel. It's Nimrod is the same fellow. And very charismatic, dynamic individual. He garnished the support of all mankind to build a edifice, a tower, a Tower of Babel, and Rashi brings down that there were different intentions there. One was they were afraid that the flood was a recurring phenomenon. So they were trying to elevate themselves to get as high as possible so that they would be saved from the next time the flood comes around. Others were that they actually were attacking God. It was an attack against God. Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz lived maybe close to 300 years ago. He describes it as a rocket ship. It's very interesting. He's whole this scientific explanation that The lower you go, then there's more propulsion. I mean, this is something that, things that people were only discussing in the last century, he's talking about. But it was an attack on God. It was an attack at the very essence, at the core. And Rashi is bothered by the different punishments. We're going to see the Rashi inside in a moment, but Rashi says that how is it possible that for theft, for stealing, everybody gets wiped out, right? And attack on God himself. Okay, the punishment was they get spread out, they get scattered. God, what happens? God says it's, they have a common language that allows them to unite and work together. So you know what? That's the concept of 70 nations. They each one got their own language, and that spread them out, split them up, so that they can't come back and fight against God again. Right? Doesn't seem such a bad punishment. So what bothers Rashi says, I don't understand. Why were they, if anything, what they did was worse than the people of the flood. They stole. And here literally it was the decimation of the entire humanity. And yeah, they get scattered. So let me tell you what Rashi says. V'chi ezu kasha, says Rashi, what's worse? Shildor hamabul, the behavior of the generation of the flood, or Shildor haflaga, or the generation of the dispersion? Elu lo pashta yad be'ikar, the flood, they did not attack the essence of the Almighty. But the people of the dispersion, they were literally sent forth their hand against the essence, against God. Lilacham, to fight with him. And yet, the first group, they were destroyed. The second group, they still survived. So look at Rashi says, an unbelievable thing. Elashador hamabul hayu gazlonim. The generation of the deluge, of the flood, were thieves. V'harsa meriba v'nehem, and there was strife among them. They did not get along. They could not stand one another. L'kach nevda, therefore they were destroyed. Ve'elu hayunagin ba'ava v'reyes b'nehem. Yet the generation of the dispersion, they acted with love and friendship amongst each other. Shenemar Safa Achas Dvar Machadim, the introduction to the Parsha of the building, it says they were all of one Safa and one mind. They acted in unity, they acted cohesively. Lamarata, from here we learn, Shesonoi HaMachlokas, how hated Machlokas is, V'godol HaShalom, and how great peace is. That the redeeming factor of the Dor HaFlaga was they worked together. They were fighting against God. Yeah, okay, fine. But at least they're working together. The flood, they were fighting with each other, were stealing from one another. That there's no redeeming value. Wipe them out. An unbelievable statement Rashi's making over here. That God prefers that fight against him, but in unity is better than you guys fighting amongst each other. So I heard this unbelievable question from my Rosh Shiva. Really unbelievable question. So what's the redeeming value of the generation of the dispersion? What's their redeeming value? They're doing a terrible thing. They're fighting against God. So what's the redeeming value? That they're united. Gadol HaShalom. How great it is that they're united. Now what's causing them to be united? Because they have a commonality. They have common thought, their own language. So what does God do? He gives them all different languages and splits them up. It makes no sense. It's almost like Chelm. The one thing that they have which is good, God goes and takes away from them. If you're telling me, Raj is telling me that what's redeeming why they were not destroyed is because they're getting along, because they have a common language, then why do you take that one thing away from them? What was the punishment of the Dor Haflaga? What happened? God, it says, the pasuk says, Vaya. It says, Hava Nerda, Hashem says to his base, and let's go down, V'navla Sham Sfatam. We're going to mix up their language, Asher lo yishmu ish sfat pre'eyu, that they will not be able to understand one another anymore. Vayafetz Hashem otam misham abnei kol haaretz vayachtu livnot ha'ir. And then they did not get along, they could not interact, they could not, and then they were spread out all over the world. That's where you got the 70 languages came from. Parsha starts, Vayikol haaretz safa echas, they were all one language. Rashi said it was Lashon HaKodesh. They all spoke Lashon HaKodesh. Udvarim achadim. Dvarim achadim means they were be'etza achas. They were in one council. They worked cohesively. They had one common way of communicating, and that allowed them to work cohesively. And Rashi said, and that's why they weren't destroyed. So what does God do? He takes away the one thing that's their redeeming factor. Very difficult to understand. And yet they don't get destroyed. Why don't they get destroyed? Why are they worse than the Dor HaMabul? What did Rashi say?
It was nice to each other.
So what do? Now? You're taking away what made them nice to each other. The Safa Achas, which allows them to be nice to each other, and you're taking it away.
The purpose is not good.
What's that?
The purpose for what they are doing is
so then kill them. Then kill them. So no, because they were good. Because they weren't so bad. Why? Because they were together. Take it away. Now take that thing away. Let's understand. I think it's a very strong question. Needs to be understood. Over Sukkot, I had a different question. The 7 days of Sukkot in Parshas Pinchas, there are what's called the Emporium, the 70 bulls that are brought. You start with 13, 12, 11, it goes down, all the way down. What is the symbolism of the 70?
the 70 nation in the world.
So Rashi brings down, Parei Achag, Shivim Heim. There are 70 bulls that are brought each day. By the way, the fact that we have different korbanot on each day of Sukkot, we read from the Torah, there's different animals, makes a big difference, because the fact that there's each day is served differently allows us to say a full Hallel. We do a full Hallel in each day. On Pesach, there's no difference in the service each day, so it's a Chatzi Hallel. Only on the first day of Yontiv or 2 days of Yontiv, and then it becomes a Chatzi Hallel. But here we have, it's a different service each day. The Avodah is different, so we do a full Hallel every single day of Sukkot. But the Rashi says, what were the Parei Achag, the 70 bulls? Shivim Hem. There were 7, Keneged Shivim Umos, corresponding to the 70 nations. Then Rashi says, Shemismatim v'holchin, we diminish, we go down. We go down from 70 all the way down. Why do we go from 70 all down? Because it seems to be, it's an attrition, like you're chopping them off, you're going down, it's going down in number, right? Now that would seem to be symbolic of something that's not so great. It's like destruction. It represents the destruction of the nations. And yet the Gemara and Rashi brings it down here too. It says that if the nations of the world would have realized the benefit that they receive from the karbanos that they brought for them on Sukkot, they would not have destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. That if the nations of the world would have realized what the benefit they receive from the bulls that are being brought, they would not have destroyed it. So that's contradictory statements. On one hand, Rashi says, why do we go down from 70? We keep going down in number each day less, because it represents the destruction of the nations. And yet we have another statement in Chazal that said if the nations would have realized the symbolic value, the benefit that they receive from the bulls, they would not have... It doesn't make sense. It's a contradictory statement. The bulls seem to represent their destruction, and yet on the other hand, we're saying that there's a tremendous benefit from the bulls. How do we reconcile those two statements of what the symbolism of the 70 bulls are? One last question. If I ask you, we just did the Rashi, Sonoya Machlokas, Machlokas, good or bad? Everyone says, what, the worst thing? Destroys communities, Machlokas, horrible, terrible. Right? We don't want Machlokas. Machlokas that's horrible.
What is it?
Machlokas. Machlokas is dispute.
Oh.
Is dispute good or bad? Dispute, terrible, right? Horrible. It destroys families, destroys dispute, the worst thing. Listen to a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says like this, that if you have machlokas, you have dispute, that's not l'shem shamayim, that it's not being done for the sake of heaven, so then sofo this bata, it will be nullified at the end. Meaning, chor means one of the parties, or the dispute itself will not endure. And it gives the example of Korach and his henchmen. Korach, who waged a major dispute against Moshe Rabbeinu, Parsha's Korach. On the other hand, it says, what is a machlokas l'shem shamayim for the right reasons, for the sake of heaven? That's the machlokas of Hillel and Shammai. The two yeshivas, big yeshivas, one run by, the Rosh Yeshiva was Hillel, the other one was Shammai, had major disputes throughout the Talmud. And that's a machlokas l'shem shamayim. And what does it say there? And it's sofo lehiskayim. What does sofo lehiskayim mean? That it will eternally endure. It'll go on forever. If machlokas is so bad, why do you want a machlokas to go on forever? Should have said that if it's l'shem shamayim, then eventually they'll make friends and it'll be no more machlokas. That's what it should have said. Eventually there'll be peace. No, you know what the blessing is? If it's l'shem shamayim, you know what the blessing is? Oh, it's going to go on forever. That's a blessing. That's a good thing. Who wants machlokas to go on forever? It's completely different than what you normally understand. What the Mishnah should have said is that a machlokas that's not l'shem shamayim, maybe the parties will get wiped out, the parties will destroy, and that'll end. A machlokas l'shem shamayim, they'll make peace. No, it'll be forever. That machlokas l'shem shamayim, for the right reason, it'll go on forever. Why is that a good thing? Why is that a good thing? So we're asking three questions here. We're trying to figure out. Number one, Rashi says that the redeeming factor of why the flood, the nation of the deluge, the generation of the deluge got destroyed, whereas the ones that fought against God, they fought against God directly. Pashtu yadeim ba'ikar, Rashi says. They did not get destroyed, is because, as that says, there was Safa Achas, they communicated all together, and therefore there was Shalom and there was Reyus, they acted in unity, and therefore they didn't get destroyed. So why is the punishment taking away their one redeeming factor? When we split them up, make them different language. That's question number one. Question number two, we're asking the Parei Achag, the bulls that we bring on Sukkot, representing the nations of the world, seems to be that it's Pochas V'hol, it goes down in number from 70 all the way down, representing the destruction of the nations, which would not bode well for them, you would think. And yet, our sages say that if they would have realized the benefits, the merit that they receive, the schus that they get from these bulls, how it protects them, they wouldn't have destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. How could something that's reflecting their destruction be something that is considered beneficial? And the last question we just asked is, if machlokas is so bad, then why do you want a machlokas Shem Shemaim to endure? That is, for the sake of heaven, it should go on forever. Let's share this idea with you, and then we'll see how it answers. The Talmud itself, the whole Talmud, is based on machlokas. Right? If you study Talmud, there's not one page in the Talmud you don't find a fight. But it's interesting. We record the dispute. We don't just say, it's not like a Ketzer Shulchan Aruch, like a just giving you the bottom line halacha. A lot easier if you could just study. This is the halacha, this is the halacha, this is the halacha. We get into what the dispute was, and this is what his position was, and that was his position was. And then when you're going to the different layers, you learn the Tosfot. He brings down the Talmud here, seems to argue with the Talmud over here, and how do we reconcile it, and maybe talking about different scenarios, and it's all about dispute. It's all fights. All fights. This is really a very critical point over here in understanding, in general, what we need in life to be successful, what we need in our families, what we need in our communities. We're being taught here a very, very important point. We cannot validate ourselves. We cannot feel good about ourselves. We cannot feel that we have anything to contribute if everything was monolithic, if everyone was the same, if everyone looked the same, spoke the same, thought the same. If everything was the same, no one would be able to accomplish anything. I wouldn't even feel compelled to do anything if I know what I'm contributing is not really anything. Because you know what? What I'm thinking or what I'm saying, what I'm able to do is the same thing as you're doing. So why do I have to do anything? The concept of dispute in and of itself, that we don't agree, is the biggest blessing that we could have. When you argue with someone, we're not talking about arguing with someone because you don't like them. When you argue about something, you have a point and they have a point. You know what happens when you argue with them? You understand better what you're trying to say. You get clarity in what you're trying to say. It might be at the end of the day you agree with him and you change. But you know what? If you don't agree with him, you'll understand what you're trying to say even better. You'll be able to present yourself even better because hearing other perspectives and other opinions allows me to work on what I need to be accomplishing and what I'm trying to do even in a better manner. You need to have that. The truth of Torah, the truth of halacha, the truth of all these things would not be able to come unless you had different perspectives challenging that. Diversity is the biggest blessing that we could have. The fact that we aren't all the same, that we don't think the same, we don't speak the same, we don't look the same. Trying to change that, people don't realize, but trying to change that is the most destructive thing. Trying to make everybody be the same is the most destructive thing that could happen for humanity. Because each and every one of us would lose our validation if everybody was the same. If you take a look, it's interesting. In the most totalitarian regimes, you look in North Korea, they all look the same. Everything is the same. That's what they're trying to control. They don't want different perspectives. They don't want to have different ideas, different thoughts. Cookie cutter is dangerous. Cookie cutter is not healthy. If the individual doesn't grow when everything is the same. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the nations of the world. They're working together. They're working together, but you know what? They're all the same. They're thinking the same. They're speaking the same. They have shalom, but it's manifesting itself in a destructive manner. They're not developing themselves. The way they're validating their unity is they're trying to fight against him. Excuse me. The blessing he's giving them is, you want to be one? You know the ultimate way to be one? The best way to be one? Real shalom doesn't mean we're all the same. Real shalom means we act harmoniously. That means that even though we're all diverse, there's a place for everybody. That's what shalom is. Shalom doesn't mean peace. Shalom means harmony. Shalom means the ability to interact and recognize the validity of every single position. What God is giving them a blessing, your shalom that you have now, it's safa. It's one language. It's interesting. We find two lashona, two ways to describe language. It's safa or lashon. Safa is external. Safa lechutz is an expression. It's external. Lashon is in your mouth. It's inside. It's internal. Right? They're working now. What's uniting them is an externality. He's giving them the option. You want to really be one? I'm going to create a diversity. I'm going to create a situation where it'll either make or break you. You will take this diversity. Either you'll destroy each other because you're going to be focused on your differences and fighting about it, or ultimately you'll be able to come together and unite as a world. You'll be able to unite, that you'll be able to use those differences that you have to work harmoniously as one. That's when you'll become really, that's when the shalom will really be a shalom, that you'll feel fulfilled. You won't feel a need to attack God. You won't feel a need to attack each other, because you'll give each other a place. You'll understand the importance of what each person represents. That's the true blessing that God is giving them. He's taking away what is an external, superficial unity, allowing them to truly become united by giving them this different language, different modes of communication, different culture, but that's the goal. The goal is that they should be able to come together and function in a united format, consolidate and become one. That's what he's blessing them with. That's the blessing. Okay? You're at this level, it's better than what's going on in Dor HaMabul. Dor HaMabul, they hate each other. There's no shalom whatsoever. Destroy them. You at least are showing shalom. But you want to have real shalom. Real shalom is validate each other. Don't feel the need to attack me. Validate and feel that you can grow and work and have a place for one another. That's what he's giving him, that blessing. So we've answered. The punishment is really just giving them an opportunity for growth. It's allowing them now to have true peace, to have true harmony, that they can come together and work as one. We've answered that question. Machlokas is not really a bad thing. If it's not l'shem shamayim, if it's personal, I don't like what you're saying because I don't like you. That means I'm not trying to validate what I'm saying, what you're saying, by having a real meaningful dialogue. I'm just trying to destroy you. And anything you say, I'm going to argue with. There's no harmony going to be created from that. If it's Shammai and Hillel, it says Shammai and Hillel, they argue about many, many things. They still married each other. They ate each other's food. The Talmud says that was harmony. That's true harmony. That type of machlokas, that's enduring. You want that to endure. We don't want to all become the same. We want to have that diversity. So I think the pshat by the bulls is as follows. Ultimately, what happened over here was, there originally was one. It was one nation. It became 70, because God needed to give them the challenge. You want to function as one, learn how to do it with diversity. That's the blessing he's giving them. But ultimately, though, what the goal of world peace should be, not that now they're all going to destroy one another and then have one person left surviving. They will function, instead of functioning apart at 70, they'll figure out a way how to conglomerate, come together, unify, with keeping their diversity, but harmoniously working as one. I think that was the pshat over here. The pshat of the Parei Chag is not it's going down from 70 to 1 to represent their destruction. The idea is it's going down in number to represent their unification. That's what it's meaning. It's representing them unifying, coming together, working together, using their perspectives, using their different cultures to interact in a positive manner to get the best out of one another. That's what it's saying is, if they would have recognized that's the merit of the Parei Chag that gives them some special schut that they're able to do that, they would never have destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. Not that it's representing their destruction. We're not looking for the destruction of the nations of the world. We're looking for the harmonious interaction for the nations of the world. And the introduction, Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in his introduction to the Mesilas Yesharim, he says that it's a Jew's obligation, interesting, a Jew's obligation to create Tikkun Achvas Hamadinos. Tikkun, which means what's the word Tikkun?
Not fixing.
A fixing, a correction of Achvas Hamadinos, of the brotherly love amongst the nations of the world. A Jew has that responsibility to try and create that brotherly interaction between the nations of the world as well. Right? We have it in our Yom Kippur davening, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur davening. It says, Tein pachtecha, Hashem, put your fear al kol maasecha, v'yirascha al kol habaruim, that God, on the nations of the world, put your fear, your pachad, let them be scared of you, and put fear of heaven on the Jews. And it ends up there, Vayasu chulam, and everyone should come together as an aguda achas, in one bond. So we said it's in the blessing of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, is that we have responsibility not to figure out a way how to create that sense of unity and bond between all the nations of the world as well. The one piece that I just want to add here, because I think this is the most critical part that I want to talk to us in terms of parents. All too often, we look at ourselves, we look at our values, we look at who we are and what we want, and we want our children to be that way. All our children, and we hold them responsible to meet the standards that we have equally. And we hold them against each other. You know, your brother did this and your sister did that. Why can't you do this? That same message of universal diversity, we need to understand in our own families, they're not the same. They're not the same. Our responsibility as parents is not to have all our children be the same. Is to identify the strengths of each one of our children, understand how they are all different, and teach them how to be able to get along with one another. Teach them how to feel good about who they are and how they can appreciate that their brothers or sisters might not be like them, but they're special as well. That same message of how important machlokus is, that same message of how important diversity that God is teaching mankind, we need to understand it. What happens, chas v'shalom shouldn't happen to anyone, is that we push and push and push that everyone should be the same mold. And only when it gets to a point where we finally realize, you know what, this child is completely out of the mold, we still have that paternal love, we start accepting him for who they are, but it's too late to be able to capitalize on that because of what they've become. So God is going to teach us that we have to accept them from whoever they are. And that, by the way, that teaches us tolerance, accepting other people too, through our own children. Sometimes God's message, and it should never happen to us, of tolerance and intolerance will come through, well, wait till your child's like that. Then you'll start appreciating other people that might not be like you as well. Our goal is to appreciate the strengths of our children and let them feel that they can be successful within whatever their challenges are for themselves and then for their siblings. That they can function cohesively even though they're not exactly the same. And it's hard because we don't think about that, parents. We do say, you know what? My oldest son, listen, he did this. Why can't he do that? You know what? That's not his challenge in life. That's not what he needs to be doing in life. It's not an easy thing to do, but that is how we raise successful children. Recognizing their strengths, getting them to appreciate one another's strengths, and then working together as one.
The same in the classes. Thank you, Rabbi.